I am going to pass over to Richard to get the meeting started this morning. Thank you very much.
Libby, morning. Thank you very much for getting us started, and absolutely good morning to everybody. It's really nice to see another full turnout today. Of course, we've been running these sessions over the last 3 or 4 months as an alternative to our usual modus operandi, and I think that they are becoming a very helpful resource for many of us just to check in with stakeholders across the region. Of course, our purpose is to ensure that we create the right environment for businesses to thrive and flourish through leadership in our city region, but not only that, just to make sure that across different walks of life, we help to ensure that we're tackling inequality and that we're supporting stakeholders and citizens in the city to get a fair deal for all. I think since we last met, there's a lot that has happened. We have seen some of the easing of restrictions around lockdown. We have seen, of course, a number of statements from the Chancellor yesterday that are no doubt going to impact many of us. We saw a big announcement for the cultural sector last week, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in detail as the morning unfolds. But I think it's also important to remember that, as we have seen in Leicester over the course of the last week or two, we continue to operate in a fragile environment where actually local flare-ups can cause quite large repercussions in terms of taking us backwards in our ambitions to drive economic activity and to drive forwards. And again, with our guest Christina Gray, we'll perhaps explore that a little bit further forwards. But I do think that we have seen a number of very positive changes in the course of the last 2 or 3 weeks, both in terms of supporting job retention, the ongoing support for younger members of our community in terms of the training and business support to allow us to bring people back into our businesses, but also looking at the stimulus packages that help us to either move the housing sector forward, local growth funding to help to stimulate infrastructure investment, or indeed looking at how we might support a greener deal for housing as part of our economic activity. And across that as well, we have seen that the hospitality industry is starting to remobilise, and I think that's a really positive step for us to be able to bring forward some of that social engagement, as well as helping those organisations who've really struggled over the course of the last 3 months to start their economic activity plans. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to James just to give us a brief update in terms of our activity in the region. James.
Thank you, Richard. Very good morning to everybody. I shall move at some pace because I'm keen to allow time for our speakers and for some open up some discussion. But there is a lot to say, so I shall try and keep it brief. So yeah, this is the 8th gathering we've had now over the fortnightly frequency. So we reckon it's approaching 1,000 members have participated, some on multiple occasions, others just once or twice over that last 16 weeks. And that's both chamber and initiative members. We've been trying to pull really our members together for us to help to impart some of the things that we're doing, some of the roles we've been playing, but also hear, most importantly, from you, and give you the chance to share experience, share learning, share some of the challenges. We want to continue to do that today. We have been now starting to open up some other formats for how we're bringing together. So we have, for instance, a session we're doing next week with BT, talking on the digital agenda. We're aiming to be bringing together some sessions with our local MPs, which we're getting the dates in the diary for. Also, we're doing another session following on from the theme we were talking about a fortnight ago around transport and mobility, with Foot Anstey hosting a session around that. And we're hoping also potentially to be working on something probably virtual related to using the Fiesta, Bristol Bloom Fiesta, as a means by which to get business talking to each other, working with Thrings and the team there. Across Business West, there's quite a lot of effort going into looking at how we can start to stimulate some of the export work that we do, which is a big part of what Business West is about. But also we just launched a finance hub, which we'll be able to tell you more information in the write-up, but I won't go into that now. So we, as Richard was saying, we kind of started to move into a slightly newer phase, but there is some real fragility out there. We have been partners in a campaign which we're going to have colleagues who may be able to tell us a bit more about it, and you may have seen some of the hearts on Queen Square, for instance, signalling the fact that we are trying to encourage business and employers to open up where they can, start trading, but anchored within the safety messaging, which is so important around a campaign called Bristol Together. And I think that is the challenge of our time, really, how we start to get things going at a time when we know we are living and working with COVID and establishing that balance. We are starting to see, unfortunate, I've just been hearing some statistics from North Somerset from Job Centre Plus about some of the redundancies and the potential jobs at risk, which we know are going to climb. We've been working with the Combined Authority to make sure that there is a rapid response team in place for that we can help to participate and play a part in, to support both the businesses and the employees, of course, through what is going to be a challenging period. We've also been helping to further some of the support measures, and I know we're all probably trying to digest what Rishi Sunak said yesterday, but some of the earlier programs of support for grants to businesses, we are trying to make sure get into the hands of some of the businesses weren't originally eligible. We had some lobbying success, and we need to make sure that those businesses do apply and get that money into their businesses to help to sustain themselves. So that's work going on across the west of England, and we've been helping to support. Also, in the last fortnight, government have come out with a request for shovel-ready projects, which I know our local enterprise partnership, our combined authorities, our councils have fed into. We've helped to support some of the work gone on around that, particularly around places like the Temple Quarter and enterprise area, but also the whole of the Temple Quarter as one of the biggest pieces of regeneration indeed in the UK that we need to make sure is invested in by our government. And then also in the last fortnight, we've helped to launch a statement of intent coming out of the Bristol One City partnership that we've played a very central role within. It's a statement of intent about what we want the future economic growth to look like over the next few years. It's a sort of plan for a plan in many ways, but we launched it at the One City the One City gathering Friday before last with about 300 people on a Zoom call. And again, we'll send you a bit more information about that, and keen for many of you are involved, but others may want to be. Two more quick things from me. We are going to be writing to you, help to support a campaign which we think is very timely around putting further emphasis into transport, into cycling infrastructure in our transport system, building on what WECA have just formally signed up to in terms of a cycling walking investment plan, a thing called CycleWorks Bristol, which was briefly mentioned at the last meeting, but we're going to be writing to you, asking for you to lend your support to something which I think people will be absolutely want to be behind, but it's a very timely way of, I think, making some substantial changes there. And then I think with a big emphasis around things like green growth and the whole digital shift, we are wanting to encourage you as members to tell us what you think in a changing environment. Write some blogs, write some pieces, come and talk to us. If you want that to help to drive our agenda, we are here to listen to what you want and what you need. We have started to publish some blogs around this, and we'd be very happy to do that if you're able to give us some, so we can, if you talk to Victoria, myself, or Nina from the team. So I think I'll move now, Richard, if that's okay, to introduce Christina Gray, who's the Director of Public Health, who I hope now is on the call.
Jen,
who's going to? Yeah.
I'm not sure Christina's on, actually. Let's just double check. I know that she was tied up just ahead of this meeting, so Christina might not be on.
Okay, I'll hand back to you.
Yeah, well, I just wonder then if we'll move the agenda forwards, and Guy, I've saw that little thumbs up, brilliant. So Guy, if I could ask you to step in early, thank you. And obviously, what we're really interested to hear is, your work as a university in the city, how you're responding, and perhaps the needs of where we need to work together in the coming months.
So very happy to do that Richard and James, and thanks to all on the call and many other organisations and colleagues around the city for the way we've all pulled together. It's been heartwarming and inspirational experience working with our partners in the city in the recent past. So just a few words about the university. It's a big organisation. We turn over on the order of £750 million a year. We have 7,000 or 8,000 employees, 25,000 students. We're conscious that we're a big force in the city and we want to be a force for good. And not just in economic terms, but clearly we contribute something on the order of, in terms of our, not just us, but our students' spending power, about £1 billion a year to the West of England economy. The stuff we're going through is not wildly different from the things that the University of the West of England would be going through. I can't speak in detail on their behalf, but do expect similar processes and issues to be facing them. One thing to make clear is that we have been operating throughout the lockdown period. We haven't been closed. The vast majority of our staff have been working from home. And of course, our students have been learning and graduating and being examined, all that stuff, but online since April. The campuses have, however, been shut for physical activity, except for a few hundred staff, and who are keeping the place ticking over, and some of our researchers working on site on COVID-related research throughout the period. So our top priorities through the lockdown period have been to ensure the well-being of our students and staff, to enable the students to learn, to be assessed, to progress and graduate, all online since late March, and to continue to deliver other activities, including research, throughout the period. A few of our staff have been furloughed where appropriate, and when we simply have no work for them to do. And the other big thing is to work with our civic partners to enable them to survive and renew and then thrive in the COVID era. I'm very appreciative of the work that the City Office and the One City approach has enabled us to contribute to, and also the direct bilateral partnerships with many of our sister organisations through the city. And I pay great tribute to the individuals and groups of students and staff who've made, in my view, inspirational contributions to getting through this. Everything from membership of SAGE at national level and virology, through to providing car parks and accommodation to the NHS, from producing hand sanitizer to enabling artificial intelligence to be used in the city's intensive care units. So now we face the reopening process, so the reopening of our campuses for physical use. That process is now underway. It's an immensely complicated challenge. The labs and what have you, which is the first focus to get our research community back into the work, is in some ways the easy bit, because they're used to wearing PPE. The tricky bit is getting them down the corridors, using the toilets, the general facilities within the buildings. And then we come to the harder challenge of having 20,000 plus students rejoin us and using those facilities. But phase one is underway right now, so getting back into our labs and libraries and getting the buildings reopened. We're also, like many organisations in the city, reshaping our finances. We're facing substantial shortfalls in this financial year. Our financial year runs out at the end of this month, on the order of £20 million net, and bigger numbers for next year. So that means reshaping our operation to some degree, holding back on expenditure wherever we can, and dealing with that loss of income, which is very substantial, something on the order of £150 million at our present best estimate over the next 2 years. But nothing that disturbs the fundamental strengths of the organisation. So we'll manage. And the shortfalls come not just in terms of overseas tuition fees, which are the thing which has caught the headlines, but also holding back research income that we can't now deliver the liabilities against. And of course, rental, when we have student accommodation that is not being occupied, and we will not charge our students rent when they're not able to occupy. The big thing then is bringing our students, the 20,000 more of them, and more of our workforce back onto, the students back to Bristol, and having a more phased approach than normal in the latter part of September and the early part of October for bringing our taught students, on the order of 20,000 of them, back onto campus. They will be having a presence in the city. We want them to be back in the city. We will be doing what we might term a blended offering, online and on campus, if you will. So there won't be mass face-to-face lecturing, but we will have labs, tutorials, seminars, and so on for them to enjoy their face-to-face learning experience, and a different approach to the way they live. So we will be using living circles, which is a sort of, if you like, a version of the bubbles that we're becoming familiar with, to enable the social and cultural side of the student experience to be enjoyed and in safety. We'll be thinking about how they safely get to and from campus. I'd note that UWE have a bigger challenge there than we do, moving people out to Frenchay from the middle of the city. And we will encourage them, indeed, be quite clear with them about the expectations that they need to live up to their responsibilities in living with their neighbours and the fellow citizens of Bristol. And we want them to help get the local economy up and running again through their participation and their pounds in spending in the retail, hospitality, cultural, nighttime economy of our city, and indeed the life of the city. They bring a great deal of that life, and I suspect we could all do with a bit more life and a little less lockdown in the immediate future. And finally, we will deploy our own science advisory group, which has been working with us internally and working very closely with Christina Gray and her colleagues in the public health function of the City Council. We have a very, very strong epidemiology group, and it is very well aware of the way the city works. This is the group that which is at the heart of our Children of the 90s project, which is a multi-decade partnership with our city. So they will be charged with helping us devise and assure ways of living, working and learning which are safe and enjoyable for our students, our staff and the people of the city. That was it from me. Happy to take questions during the Q&A.
Thank you very much, Guy. That's very helpful. And there's a nice segue actually. So Christina is now on the call. So welcome, Christina. And I know I've been part of the weekly city updates with a number of stakeholders who are on this call actually. And in reflection as to just where we are as a city region around COVID, but also reflecting on what's happened in other parts of the country, i.e. Leicester, it'd be really helpful to give our members a sort of sense of where we are now and how you see the situation moving forwards over the next few months, Christina. So over to you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Richard. Good morning, everyone. Sorry to be arriving late, and unfortunately I've got to leave a little early as well, but very okay. Yeah, just you all froze for a second. So if there are any questions, Richard and the Bristol West team can collect those and forward them on, and we'll make sure that we answer. So from a public health point of view, I think I said this last time when I spoke to this group, the risks to health from the lockdown itself are now equal to that of the virus, but the virus is still very much with us. It hasn't gone away, and in spite of the best efforts of our scientific community, we don't yet have a vaccine in sight. So the situation that we find ourselves in the southwest and in Bristol in particular is that we have had consistently low incidence, so consistently low numbers and rates all the way through. Our sort of pandemic curve has followed exactly the same shape for those of you who follow the shape of the curve, so it's not been any different, it's just been lower in terms of number. Now, what that may mean also is that there are more of us in the southwest who are susceptible. So it's possible if we did have a further spike or wave that there are more of us who are vulnerable if there is any immunity to be gained from having us, in that we have had low numbers. We're at the very bottom of the pandemic curve at the moment. So for Bristol, we have about 5 cases over a 5 to 7 day period. So we haven't gone below that yet, but that's where we've stabilised. We are keeping a very close eye on that, as Guy said, jointly with university colleagues, but also with Public Health England and with the National Joint Biosecurity System, which is looking at the data nationally. So what we are watching very carefully for is any sort of uptick in that curve. And that would be announced either locally, we would share that, or nationally. So to understand what's happening in Leicester, we are probably at the bottom of the league tables, if you like, and Leicester is at the top. So from all the way through the pandemic, Leicester and indeed other areas of the north have had consistently higher numbers and rates. London also. So Leicester itself has had 3 times the overall number of cases that we have, and has got many more live cases going through. The issue around the data it is being resolved, and certainly in the southwest, all local authorities are available, the data available to us. So we have all the data from both the Pillar 1 and Pillar 2 that you've heard spoken about. We have postcode data. So from a southwest point of view, we're at the optimum point to be beginning to see on the economy. It's really important that we are able to open for business, but open for business safely. So we, as well as having the low numbers, we're also in the summer months, and we don't know, but it's likely that the virus will, if it's going to re-emerge when it gets colder. That's certainly what happens with flu. So we're sort of anticipating that further peaks and waves will intensify as it gets colder. So as we reopen, we're not reopening into a steady state. So all of the work that all of the businesses, all of you, all of us have been doing to be COVID secure and enable people to work from home or to come back to work safely is hugely important. Can't underestimate it enough. We've launched, all the local authorities launched outbreak management plans last week. Now those are hard responding to and managing. Now the business sector can work with us, and we can work with you to maximise the protection and the benefits of good planning and quick response. So we have standard operating procedures for dealing with communicable disease. Those are in place all of the time, and pre-COVID, not very many people were so interested. Where there's a single incident of infection, that needs to be picked up. And to be identified, there needs to be a test. So the first thing we need to be all doing is encouraging people to get a test if they're unwell. That positive test is then fed into the national test and trace system. And the second thing we need to be encouraging everybody to do is to engage with that system, to lift the phone, to respond to the call. There's a low level of public trust at the moment. I think some of the calls have been going out on 0300 numbers, so we've got a little bit to do around communication to make sure that everybody knows how they will be communicated and to proactively respond. In terms of settings and workplaces, if a workplace sees 2 or more cases within a close time period, that constitutes what we would call a cluster or an outbreak. And I would encourage, we're encouraging all employers then to contact Public Health England. So we need to have eyes and ears on this. So although the system should be picking this up, and the system should pick up if there's a linked context and be coming to Director of Public Health and going to the employer and then having an outbreak control meeting to look at how we deal with it, it's quite possible that you will be the people who will see it first. So my request really to all of you, who large and small employers, is if you see 2 or more cases in your remit, contact Public Health England, and James and Libby, we can make sure we get the information out to everybody so you know how to do that, so that we can make sure that we're picking it up. The faster we pick things up, the quicker we can stamp it out. And in terms of enabling businesses to stay open, the quicker we can get an outbreak control, an instant control meeting set up around any outbreak, possible outbreak or setting, the quicker we can contain it and the more we can keep business flowing. So we've got instances in the southwest where employer have been very proactive, picked up that they had 2 cases before it had even hit the PHE radar. By the time we had the incident management meeting, that employer had encouraged all their staff to go and get tested. They didn't stop trading. We did the risk management. There were people who were off isolating and there was a bit of containment, but it didn't interrupt the business. And that was because they had really, really good systems in place and knew how to deal with it. So I know you're from a number of different local authorities, certainly in Bristol and neighbouring authorities. We, Director of Public Health, we wanted to work very closely with you, and there's been lots of information put out, and it should be available to you. If any of you feel you are not getting the information or support that you need, please just contact us. Come through Business West and contact us, and we'll make sure that you do. And I'll just finish by saying thank you to all of you. The sacrifices that people have made in terms of businesses, business owners, employees has been just phenomenal. This is really tough. It's not going to get any easier. Our job in public health is to work with you to make sure that we keep business moving, that we keep open for business, but we do it safely. So thank you.
Christina, thank you ever so much for that update, and I think in particular the very helpful feedback and guidance for us to really encourage our staff members to get tested if they feel unwell. I think that's really important. And then I was really touched with what you were saying around actually openness and transparency, so that we can work together very quickly across the system to contain any outbreaks. So we'll certainly make sure that we're connecting through Business West into your channels and the Public Health England channels. Thank you very much, and we'll I know you're going to drop off early, but we'll capture any questions and we'll make sure that we join the feedback. So thank you very much for that. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Naomi Miller to now speak. So Naomi is the Deputy Director for the Bristol Cultural Development Partnership. We know that culture plays such an important part of why we have such a great city. Anybody who read the Times article a couple of days ago suggesting that actually the livability of cities is what makes so much of our economic stimulus work so well. And of course, we know we've got a very strong cultural offer, but this is a segment of the industry, of the community that have been really hit. So Naomi, I'm going to hand over to you. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you very much for having me, and also for that great introduction. I think all of us working in the cultural sector would echo that. Culture makes a place. People want to live and work in our towns and cities because of the culture that's on their doorstep, whether that's the local theatre, cinema, dance classes for young and old, all sorts of things. So we see ourselves as being absolutely crucial, obviously to life in general, as well as being a huge economic player, not just for the West of England, but also for the UK. One of the things I was asked to talk about today was about how the cultural sector is adapting. And so on the screen at the moment, you can see some initiatives that have been taking place over the last couple of months as cultural sectors have and cultural organisations have been adapting. There's been quite a lot of focus on digital content, and we've all become very familiar with Zoom, as you know, but here are just a few examples of the type of work that's happening within the city, whether that's people streaming content, previous content that they'd already created, like Bristol Old Vic at Home, whether it was musicians getting together to create new content as part of Bristol Takeover Online. And in fact, that was also about raising the profile and fundraising for grassroots community venues and music venues in the city, reinforcing this point that we are an ecology. It's not just about big venues, it's about individual artists, it's about small community spaces. Exhibitions have been put online, such as at Knoll West Media Centre, and there has been a citywide initiative called the Bristol Arts Channel, which had its pilot in June, which was a coming together of around 40 organisations who were all creating and broadcasting content through the Bristol Arts Channel. That was very much a pilot, and we're hoping that that will come back again later on in the autumn, and that's also being supported with some research by the research cluster who are based at Pervasive Media. So we'll actually know some kind of findings that are coming from that. I think the caveat to this digital online, and some people may have seen the report over the weekend, the National Theatre have been broadcasting live into people's homes through their NT Live at Home programme on YouTube. Tens of millions of people have tuned into those. The average donation per viewer is 20p. So there is quite a lot that we need to do in terms of thinking about monetising our digital offer, whether we're asking for donations, whether it's fees, what we should be giving away as free content, but also just giving content out to enrich people's lives as well. So that's definitely something that we're thinking about. The news from the Treasury last week about the grant for the cultural sector is hugely welcome, and was the result of weeks of lobbying, both from cultural leaders across the UK, but also in huge numbers of petitions and signatories and lots of grassroots campaigning that's been going on. And it's hugely welcome, of course it is. The slight caveat to that is the theatre sector alone in the UK currently needs £330 million a month in order to survive. So all of a sudden the 1.57 billion doesn't go as far as you think. We don't know yet exactly the guidance for that money and how it will be distributed and what those programmes will be. It will be administered through organisations like the BFI and the Arts Council England. So we're all waiting at the moment to see what those guidance are, what those guidance is. One of the fears from the cultural sector at the moment is around freelance workforce. So in the theatre and also performing arts, music, those sorts of industries, our freelance workforce is 70%. And inevitably they are people, individual artists, musicians, performers, who potentially have fallen through the gaps of furlough schemes and other support that's being given, and our reliance on a freelance workforce is much higher than other sectors. So that's something that we're really conscious of. And although this funding is hugely welcome, I think we've already seen a number of cultural organisations across the country announce redundancies and even closures. And I think that we as a city region have to brace ourselves for the possibility of those. As has already been talked about, recovery and reopening is again something that we're talking about. And the news that museums and galleries could open from the 4th of July, again, was welcome, but I would not expect to see that happening quickly. A lot of the cultural organisations in the city and the region are opening slowly. So Bath opened a number of museums this week. There will be some opening over the next couple of weeks in Bristol, but actually I would expect to see more attractions and museums opening in August and even into September. And the difficulty with our music halls and concert halls and theatres at the moment is that the buildings can open, but actually the work that they put on can't necessarily happen. So one of the big things is singing. We believe that the virus is transmitted more as you project your voice and as you sing. So the buildings themselves might be able to open, but actually the work that we produce can't happen, and those freelance artists, musicians can't work. So we're a complicated ecosystem, and again this is about everything feeding into each other, and also the impact that we have on other sectors. So the idea of Bristol as a city not having a panto season this year, which I think is very likely, the impact that then has, if you think of all of those audiences, the meals out that they would have had beforehand, the drinks at the pub, the car parking that they would have paid for, the use of public transport systems, that alone, just as one example, is huge. So again, the kind of the VAT and the announcements that were made from the Treasury yesterday, I think will certainly help with some of that. But it's we're very pleased to have the grant being made from government last week. We're waiting for more information about exactly what that's going to be able to allow us to do. But this is the beginning of a journey for us, and certainly not the end.
Hang on, sorry, Naomi, I had to come off mute there. Thank you ever so much for that. And I know from my own perspective, just looking at the work the Old Vic Theatre shared over the last couple of weeks, the Grinning Man, there's been some brilliant examples of where we've been creative in our ability to showcase activity and create some of that enrichment. But I do know that actually encouraging people to make financial contributions for that is perhaps where we need to help to nudge us along. And I know I'd just like to say thank you for the work you've been doing through the Cultural Development Partnership in helping to keep the debate open, and sharing very much the ability to convene the dialogue and convene the conversation is a really important part of what we do. So thank you for all of that ongoing support. I'm going to now just draw through to open the floor for questions or conversation, and just to share with people access to our speakers, or indeed for one or two others. And I think, if I may, whilst we perhaps get people to drop their thoughts into the chat box, we've got John Smith on the line, who is the deputy to Sue Mount-Stevens as the Police Crime Commissioner Officer. And John, I know that over the course of the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of focus from the police in terms of the community policing around how we've opened up after lockdown. It'd be really interesting to perhaps just hear the views from your perspective in terms of how you feel the community are reacting to opening up of bars, restaurants, and how we continue to promote that sense of safety in the community. I don't know if you've got a bit of a view and might be able to just share one or two updates with us, John.
Thanks, Rich. Yes, happy to. Yes, it's been an interesting few weeks since I spoke to you last, which was mainly statue related, wasn't it? When I gave the last.
That's right.
Yeah. There's been continuing relaxation of the rules, which is obviously a good thing. We were, as I think you probably know from other calls we both participate in, quite nervous about this last weekend, and we thought it wasn't very helpful that all the other relaxations had started on a Monday, but the one relating to pubs happened on a Saturday. We'd rather it had been earlier, really. But I have to say, the One City approach kicked in, and it was very much a joint effort. The police put extra resources on, as they have done throughout the week, and particularly over the weekends for the last few weeks. And that is taking quite a toll on them, I think it's fair to say. But I have to say, it was primarily a feeling of relief when we got to the early hours of Sunday morning, and things were a lot better than we'd feared. And generally, people were reasonably well behaved. I have to say the police in Bristol particularly intervened in a few instances and avoided much bigger incidents happening, particularly in St Paul's. There was a rave which Andy Bennett, the local commander, actually went and directly negotiated with the people putting the sound systems up himself to get them to take it down, which was great. So we carry on, and I think we've got another demonstration planned for Sunday in Eastfield Park. Generally, as I talked about last time, there's been a bit of a mixed reaction to the policing issues, particularly around the statue. Our job very much is to listen to all of that feedback and to just try and police each incident and follow it up in a really balanced way. So we'll be looking to take that approach as well to the incident, to the event on Sunday. But generally, as I know you are, and many others in the city are, including university and others, we are very much looking at diversity and inclusion, both in the makeup of the force, but also about how we carry out our work and how our interventions go, and trying to open up the information that we provide. And also all the police officers use body-worn videos now for their interactions. So we've got various panels that review those and feedback to us and to the officers about how we can learn and engage on things. So a lot of work going on, and I think a real sense that there's a time to have that, to open up that conversation and to really make some progress on those issues with communities across the city, which we're keen to do.
Thank you very much, John. That was really appreciated. And I do know that officers have generally handled matters incredibly sensitively, and we heard, directly from Andy on Wednesday, and there was a large thanks to the way he'd handled and conducted some of those difficult discussions in that community last weekend. So thank you for the ongoing support of the police. Again, there's not lots actually from a questions perspective, so I'm going to open the floor up to a couple of other colleagues, if that's okay. So some of you might very well have seen some amazing drone footage looking into Queen Square over the course of the last few days, where we've marked out those very nice heart-shaped images to help with social distancing. And I've got both Keith Rundle and Steve Buff, who are directors for both our city centre and Broadmead bids. I wonder, and see Keith actually in front of me, Keith, whether you might just talk a little bit about the work that the bidder is helping to lead on in terms of making the city accessible to incoming visitors, welcome, and to sort of promote the city. So Keith, perhaps a little bit of an update for us in terms of your work.
Yeah, sure, thank you. So we've done some painting of the hearts, which mark out socially distanced areas into Queen Square. That was done on Tuesday and got a lot of media traction at the same time. So the images are 244 hearts, about 3 meters across and 2 meters apart. The whole point of the campaign is making people remember that the city is a safe and really welcoming place to come back to encourage that safety and confidence sense. The traction it got for Tuesday was remarkable. It was up on both the news channels. The BBC Instagram photo that went up got 435,000 likes to date. All print media locally picked it up. So plans from here is to do a similar exercise on College Green and Castle Park tomorrow, and then do another media push at the same time. We already know it's got international traction, etc., to get Bristol back to the place it belongs, really at the top of the places people want to see.
Excellent. And Keith, I'd just be interested to, we've had non-essential retail open now for a few weeks. What are the sort of footfall numbers looking like in the key shopping areas, and what's your sort of sense as to public confidence coming back in? I saw queues outside Primark a couple of weekends ago, so obviously there's some people wanting to come in and shop in the city.
Yeah, so I can give you an idea of the city centre, then maybe Steve will give you the best idea of the Broadmead. So
great, thanks.
For the city centre area, numbers are increasing, but very slowly. The challenge at the moment, I guess, is that the office occupiers still aren't tending to return. And part of that is around the message still being, if you can work at home, stay there. And the tension that then creates, of course, is that a lot of the custom for the hospitality, leisure, retail in the city centre are in fact those who would ordinarily be here working. And until they return in numbers, the situation is likely to remain challenging. But in terms of footfall, Steve will give you a better picture, I guess.
Great stuff. Well, on that little note, then, Steve, if you do want to come in and perhaps just talk about Broadmead as well, that would be really helpful.
Sure. Yeah. So from a shopping perspective, we opened most stores on the 15th of June. About 75% of the units opened then. Footfall doubled from the non-lockdown periods, but was around 55% down on last year. And we really, for the last 3 weeks, we've seen that sort of number carry through. So we're sort of settling around the 50% down on last year. During lockdown, we were at 85 to 90% down on last year. So an improvement, but Still something that we're looking at. We compare favourably to the national average. Most of the UK high streets that are measured are around 59% to 65% down on last year. So so from that respect, Bristol is faring better. Obviously, last Saturday, July the 4th, we saw more businesses open for table service and hair salons and barbers, much to everyone's relief. We saw quite a number of queues at both of those. And obviously they're doing that in a secure way, taking names and numbers down for the contact tracing. Nearly did a Boris Johnson the contact tracing. So obviously that's ongoing. We're getting more businesses opening in as the weeks go by as well. The one watch out, I think, is we've had 8 more permanent closures in the shopping quarter than before lockdown. And we've got a watch list of around 20 stores that we're keeping an eye on that haven't yet opened, which could open or able to open. So that's definitely a watch out. But some good news, as always, on the horizon. I think Tom was on the call earlier. Pure Electric on Union Street, the electric bike and scooter shop opened. I understand that's doing very well in the initial stages, so that's good news. And yesterday, the Samsung Experience store also opened in Cabot Circus, which is sort of a competitor to Apple, obviously on a different platform, but that is expecting big things from that. So that's good. So and obviously we're tying in with the Bristol Together campaign, marketing campaign as well, which we'll see a lot more of as we go through the next few weeks.
Excellent. No, thank you very much for that, and it's good to see there's some positive stories, and it's just on my news feed. Unfortunately, Boots, the chemists are having some trading difficulties on 1 or 2 areas. They've announced 48 store closures, so it is a very fragile economy, and that's just building on the point you're making around guidance to businesses around keeping staff at home where possible. We had a really interesting bit of feedback from James Freeman, who I'm not sure is on the call today, who joins us regularly. James is the MD of First Bus. James was just explaining on Wednesday to the city leaders group that bus capacity is being increased again over the course of the next few weeks. Interestingly enough, we have about 27% capacity at the moment, and occupation is a little bit lower than that from what I gather, but we're going to be moving up to 50% capacity in the coming weeks. And James is very keen that businesses do start to, where possible, encourage people to start to use the available capacity. There is likely to be more capacity than we need for the key workers now. So again, I think we'll do a bit more work with James and other stakeholders across that transportation group. I know, from, again, my own business, that's one of the reasons why we're holding back opening up the office, because of what we'd heard about retaining capacity for key workers. So to James, I think we'll do a little bit more work with James Freeman and his team, just to make sure that we are aligning on communications around that. I just wonder if there's anything else anybody wants to raise, if anybody wants to put their hand up. Helen, thank you. John Lewis not reopening in Swindon, clearly a little bit of a challenge, isn't it, on those matters. I know, Anna, you joined us last week talking very much about mobility related issues. I don't know if there's anything that's further updated or anything to add from your perspective over the course of the last couple of weeks.
No, I'd just be keen to reiterate what James said about Cycling Works Bristol. That will be a big thing that we're launching this month. We're just trying to get a few businesses lined up early before it goes formal. So if any businesses on the call are keen to sign up to that in advance of the formal launch, just let me know and I'll be in touch.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Sandy, you've put your hand up in the chat to ask a question. Would you like to just come in as well? Thank you.
Was that me, Richard?
It is, Sandy.
Yeah, it is.
Yes,
oh, great. Sorry. So I've just stepped in. So I'm really interested in whether business see the Chancellor's announcement yesterday about getting young apprentices and young people into work by offering to pay them. Do you think that's something that you, as people who are running businesses or businesses generally, will be likely to take up? We're fearful about young people's unemployment as one of the sort of big problems that will come out of lockdown. So I was pleased with his announcement yesterday, but I'm keen to know whether you think as businesses it's something you'll look to take up.
Yeah, thanks, Sandy. It's a really, really good point, and we do know that that's portion of the community who are going to be quite challenged. Actually, I think it's going to be interesting. I think from our own perspective as an organisation where I work at Arcadis, we definitely will want to bring apprentices into our business. We typically do. The challenge we've got at the moment is that those individuals need a little more closer to supervision, and whilst we've got our offices closed, that's quite hard. So I think we might just want to think about where we can prioritise to those parts of the community where businesses are able to possibly absorb apprentices in, where the appropriate supervision can be conducted. I'd welcome the views of others. I think it's a really important issue for us as a community. I don't know if anybody else wants to come in. But notwithstanding that, Sandy, what we will do with James and Victoria and the team, we'll just make sure that we're checking in on those and perhaps directing to you and your team actually around where those opportunities might exist. That's really helpful connection. Thanks. Yeah, maybe not feedback just now, but we'll definitely make sure that we're linking up with the Creative Youth Network and the fantastic work you guys do in the city. Thanks very much. Well, it's getting a little bit quieter actually, so either people's stomachs are rumbling and it's time to head off for a little bit of lunch. So I'm going to start to bring matters to a close actually. All I would just want to signpost is that as we start to get into the holiday season, and I know a lot of people need well-earned breaks, working from home, I've found, I'm sure most people have, is probably harder work than commuting to the city or to our offices or to workplaces in many respects. So James and the team, we're going to start to move to a monthly cycle of these meetings, particularly as we enter into the summer period. The team have got a lot of activities looming. We're going to start building on the webinar program that we've been talking about, that James mentioned a little bit earlier on, and similarly we've got programs around some of those lunchtime activities that Victoria mentioned last time that will be starting. If you want to engage with us or support us with any of those related activities, please do reach out to James and Victoria and the team, and we'll be really happy to engage with you to create some of those bespoke activities that stay with you. And from we've got our ongoing networking. For those who want to hang around and just have a chat, we'll be online till 1 o'clock. The last couple of sessions, it's been nice to have people who wanted to sort of stay and talk a little bit more informally. So you're very welcome to do that. And can I just say thank you to everybody, to all of our members for joining us and for being open participants in these sessions. I've certainly found them, and I think members have found them to be a really helpful source of information and a really helpful forum to allow people to share their updates or to learn from each other. So thank you. So the formal part at the moment is off. Anybody who wants to hang around for the next 20 minutes, half an hour for a bit more of an informal chat, then you're very, very welcome. Thank you very much to Libby, James, Victoria for getting this session organised as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard.